Hey, folks, it's Rick. Welcome to the strategy session. I am joined tonight by my colleague, Joe Trippi, and the great Simon Rosenberg. We are going to talk about where this election really stands as opposed to the alt reality fever dream weirdness, believing that it's already over and Trump might as well pick out curtains. Folks, we are in, I just want to start this thing out by saying that we are in a moment in political history in this country where our friends on the Democratic side, and Joe and Simon both come out of the Democratic side, they are still divided over this presidency, this president, and this race. There is not going to be another Democratic candidate for president. Get real, people. Only one man has ever beaten Donald Trump at the ballot box. That's Joseph Robinette Biden. He is doing better than you think he is right now. And tonight we're going to talk about just that. Simon, welcome to the program, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. And let's talk a little bit about the tweet you put up. I think we've got a graphic of it here in the production side. Sam, can you put that up for a second? So we've got a whole bunch of polls that show Joe Biden, 4 independent polls in this last week: Emerson, Economist, Morning Consult, and Lord Ashcroft. And Biden's ahead, folks. It's not a lot. It's not huge, but these are real numbers, and they are numbers that are coming more and more to be seen as numbers that aren't distorted by the polling averages, where there's 60 crap polls by the Republicans and 20 okay polls by independent pollsters and Democrats. So, Simon, talk to us a little bit about why this moment is, why people have a distorted view of where the election stands right now.
Yeah, 2 points. One is that I think that the big New York Times polls in October that showed Trump ahead in the battleground somehow set the tone for all the coverage since, and that there's this belief that somehow, just like with the red wave, is that this kind of thing settled in to the general zeitgeist, the general commentariat, right, that Trump's ahead. This very simple kind of facile way of looking at the election. And yet the next New York Times poll, done in December, showed Biden ahead by 2 points, right? So if the New York Times was the trend-setting thing, the New York Times latest poll actually has Biden ahead. And as I showed just, over the weekend, the 4 most recent polls taken, independent, registered voters, has the race dead even. And so Trump isn't winning. Trump isn't favored. Trump isn't he's not ahead of Biden. There have been polls showing him ahead, but just like in 2022, not everything's pointing in the same direction. The second quick point is that, to me, the most important electoral data that we have is this continued strong performance of the Democratic Party since Dobbs in 2022. Right. We just keep overperforming in election after election all across the country of every type of election. We just saw it in New York 3 last week, where the average of the polls going into election day, where we were up 3, we ended up winning by 8. We keep seeing the same basic dynamic. Democrats overperforming and winning, Republicans struggling, and I still believe that is the likely scenario about what happens in the fall.
Well, the point is,
Joe, go ahead.
No, this thing, it's a dead heat. All the polls show that. I think I'm with Simon, and I think when you really look at the numbers, Biden's slightly ahead. But none of these polls tell us anything new other than it's going to be close in November, and everything Democrats can do to get out our vote, to persuade people on the issues of Dobbs and other things. And you look at that issue alignment. I'd rather be us than them. Look at what's happening now with Russia. I'm sure we'll talk about all this, but I just think that when you look at even the economic anchor that's been there, and is for all kinds of reasons, but that weight of that economic of the weight of the economy on Biden that's been holding him down is lifting. You can see it in consumer sentiment, et cetera. So,
listen, I think, and I could just jump in, Rick, is that I think the other thing that is just not really, and this was very similar to what happened in 2022, is that the media is normalizing their ugliness, right? I mean, the Republican Party today is the ugliest thing we've ever seen in modern American history. Trump is the weakest, is far weaker than he was in 2020. The agenda is far more extreme than it was. His performance on the stump is far more erratic and disturbing. His slogan for the campaign might as well be, "I tried to end American democracy last time, but if you elect me, I'll finish the job."
I'll get the job done now.
Yeah, I'll get the job done, right? And so the thing is that in the forecasting of this, as all of us who've been in the business know, that when the shooting starts, right, and the ads start flying and the engagement, you're starting to see the Biden team engage in a very direct frontal manner, by the way, which is very encouraging to me, what we've seen the last few weeks. We know that this guy has more baggage and higher negatives than any candidate we've ever seen in our lives. And we know what we can do with this information, right? I mean, Trump is not immune to political physics. He's been far more of a loser than a winner over all these years. MAGA just keeps losing. And so I'm fundamentally optimistic about where we are. I think, as Joe mentioned, if the polls are even now, the other sort of ace in the hole that we have, in addition to them being the ugliest party in modern times and Joe Biden being a good president, is what happened in New York. And I wrote about this today.
I was just going to ask you about the Suozzi race, because you've written a lot about it, and I think it's an important race for us to talk through.
It is really important, because what happened is, and I'm very deeply involved with the Democratic grassroots, and Suozzi's campaign announced over the weekend that 2 million phone calls were made, GOTV phone calls were made in 5 weeks. In a single House race. I know, right? And that their estimate was that every targeted voter they were trying to reach received 5 postcards, right? I mean, and then in addition to hundreds of thousands of door knocks, hundreds of thousands of texts, right? The Democratic Party is in the process of building the biggest and most powerful political machine that any of us have ever seen. It takes races that should be 2 to 3 points and turns them into blowouts, like what happened in New York, particularly in specials and off-year elections, lower turnout elections. But all of this muscle that has been growing, over the last few years, and because of the fear and opposition to MAGA, because of hundreds of thousands of proud patriots who love their country, who are going to work, hours a week to promote their democracy, this is building towards a crescendo in the fall. And every time we have one of these elections, right, we kept doing better. We keep raising more money. We keep making more phone calls. People are getting more used to it, right? They're getting more used to spending 10 hours in the final week. I mean, my favorite moment in my little group was that on Tuesday night, the Suozzi campaign, because they voted until 9 o'clock, reached out to me at 6:30 and said, because of the snow, they had a lot of GOTV targets that were still untouched. Because the turnout that day during the election day itself had been a little bit lighter, would I send out an email asking my community to make calls? And the very first message I got back was, "Hey, Simon, I'm already here in a backyard in Los Angeles. There are 12 of us making calls into Suozzi's district right now. We've been here all day." And, and I don't think people really understand what's happened on our side and this power that we have now. This is like, Joe Trippi couldn't have imagined all this 20 years ago, right? This is the world that Joe Trippi tried to build with the Dean campaign originally 20 years ago. And the important thing is that it's happening, and it's getting bigger and stronger and more sophisticated and more powerful, because the threat is more real. And the great thing is that, people are being called in this moment, and they're answering the call. And I spoke to Suozzi repeatedly. He's blown away as a traditional politician who's been in this game a long time.
He's been around the block.
Yeah, he is blown away by what happened in this race and the intensity and the ferocity, the hunger that he saw with people all across the country. We've been bringing it since the spring of 2022. We're going to bring it in the fall elections, and they have no answer to all this, right? I mean, they just don't have the ability, I think, to counter the incredible machine that we're building together.
I think that's a fascinating thing, Joe. And Joe, folks, for those of you who don't know, Joe is basically the originator of digital campaigning in the country. Like way back before it was practical or
before it was powerful enough to do.
Joe came up with the idea way before the technology could catch up and make it implementable. But Joe, I mean, this is something we've talked about a lot. Is there's an increasing sense that I have, at least, that Republicans, if you break them up into different groups, they all have to make a different excuse to stick with Donald Trump. Democrats only need one reason to get out and vote for Joe Biden, and that is The alternative is simple. It is a black and white, clear cut. There's no debating what the outcome is if you don't defeat Donald Trump.
Yeah, but you know what's fascinating when getting back to the polls for a second is let's look at this. Let's think about this. So no, everybody's saying, "Oh, we got to have somebody run against Biden." We need a new generation. All that. No one does it. No one does it because the party's actually pretty unified behind Joe Biden. And then the few people who show up to try to do it are like at 4% in the polls. Now, I just want no. So, but this is fascinating. He's weak. He's got all these problems. He's too old. Okay. So I just want to get people to think about this. If someone was in the primaries right now, just one person standing, and Biden was beating them 60-35.
Right.
I mean, which would be, big margin, but he was beating up 60-35. What the hell do you think the press would be saying? I mean, they would be going crazy about how he's on the verge of being taken out. No, but of course, with Trump, who's exactly in that situation, it actually speaks to how weak he is. That Nikki Haley is getting 30-35. Yes, it's her home state, but come on, guys. I mean, it just shows there are Republicans who want to finance a campaign against him, who want to find somebody. It may only be 35, may only be 28, but I just think it shows that he's a much weaker. It proves he's a much weaker general election candidate. Sure. Those are all people. The Lincoln Project. It's the Bannon line expanding, and yes, our people are energized. I mean, that was the other thing. New York Times. The whole thing about people just progressives are exhausted.
It's
the
ridiculous.
pro-democracy wing of the country is exhausted. It's just, I mean, there's no signs of that. Again, look at what Simon and Suozzi, what happened in New York 3. There was more energy there than surprising the candidate. He's never seen that.
Yeah, I mean, so we've all been talking about this. And that piece was particularly like an eye roller for, I think, all three of us, because you read it and it's like, they must have worked really hard to go out and scrounge around to find enough pissed off people to make that story happen. Because most of the Democratic activists we're talking to and independent activists and anti-Trump activists, they understand the stakes and they're in this fight to the end.
There is, look, what happened during the red wave was that you had to believe that after Dobbs, that Republicans were more motivated than Democrats, right? Even though we had just had an insurrection, our democracy almost went away. More than half the population had their rights and freedom stripped away. That to believe a red wave was coming, you had to dismiss our overperformance in all the House specials. You had to dismiss the huge, we were raising 4 or 5 times more money than Republicans were. The voter registration numbers shifted dramatically in our direction in 2022. And then the early vote shifted dramatically in our direction. And all the indications of intensity were moving towards us. And then in 2023, we saw, and then it happened in the election. And then in 2023, it happened all over again, right? Democrats kept overperforming, Republicans kept struggling. And here we are in 2024, where Trump, let's be clear, in Iowa, 93% of registered Republicans did not vote for Donald Trump. He performed 10 to 15 points worse than the public polling. The RNC is broke. There are 4 or 5 state parties that have atrophied and crashed into the ground, right? Their thing is broken right now. There's no intensity. There's no evidence of strength and intensity in actual voting. And there hasn't been in a long, long time, right? Not even in 2016, right? He only got 46% of the vote. We've won in 2018. We won in 2020. We won in 2022. And we won in 23. And to ignore this basic reality of this heightened democratic intensity, the New York Times today, in one of their articles, literally said the red wave may be returning. I mean, I couldn't really believe it, right? Yeah, right. But the key is that you look at all this, our heightened performance, this incredible amount of money we're raising, 2 million phone calls, and to believe that Donald Trump has an advantage, you have to sort of wish all that away. And it's incredible to me that Rick, and one of the reasons I'll just finish is that part of what's so important is somebody who's been in campaigns, like the two of you have, know how important it is to actually win. Right?
Yes.
Like the test of the strength of a party isn't in a friggin' Siena Times poll. It's in getting a candidate, raising the money, executing on the ground, doing the ads, finding a message in all parts of the country in all kinds of races. And we just keep kicking their ass. I mean, the Democratic performance in the last year and a half has been among the most historic and strong overperformances that we've seen in modern history. And yet the media pretends like it's not happening, right? It's kind of a stunning thing, to be honest.
One of the things that
those specials, these off-year elections don't tell you anything, Simon.
I know. But lots of people voting in an election don't tell you anything about an election, right? But a poll of 800 people does,
that
right?
tells you more. Yeah.
I think one of the big things is that belies all the crazy Fox, Republican side fake self-confidence is they've lost 3 of their most senior committee chairmen this week in the Republican caucus. The candidate recruitment for the GOP is a shit show on top of Burning Tire Mountain right now. It is a complete wreck. The professional staff at the NRCC are flipped out because the people that are coming up are like, they're the QAnoners who are primarying the MAGA people who aren't crazy enough now. Look, Mitch McConnell still has a good map, but it ain't that great. And so a lot of the Republicans in the House are voting with their feet. And 2 big stories, folks, if you missed them this week, they're really important. One is Wisconsin redistricting is not going to be what it was before. And the second thing is New York is going to do a redistricting map at the end of the day that again changes the ball game here. So guys, let's talk a little bit about how control of the House looks going forward. I think in terms of, this is another thing. It's like this weird vibe check thing of, a red wave is coming back. No indication in the House in particular has anything like that.
Listen, the House, can I just think, Rick, what you said, and Joe, I'll turn it to you, is that we are really witnessing the meltdown of a political party right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you add it all up, the retirements, the party's broke, Trump burned through more cash last year than he raised. He's underperforming in polls, right?
They're taking over the party, and he's going to use it as
right. They fired all the senior people of the RNC. Dozens and dozens of prominent Republican officials have been indicted. More are under investigation, right? And Mike Johnson is the cowardly speaker, is spending more time sucking up to Putin than he is to American voters. When you look at all this stuff together, or the fact that Comer's huge witness last week burned
Turns
up.
out to be talking to the Russians.
He's actually talking. We learned today that he's in active discussions with Russian intelligence and acted. I tweeted out right before we came here, the Russian intelligence looks at the Republican Party, and what they see is people jumping up and down with their hands in the air saying, pick me, please, pick me. Don't pick Marjorie, right? Let me be the one, being the laundromat for all of your information and all your crap, right? It's unbelievable the level of meltdown that we're witnessing right now. And it's really terrible. I think the good news is for us is that, and Joe and I have discussed this, is the hard dollar side of Republican politics is essentially crashed. While our hard side has been bigger and more powerful than it's ever been. And as you guys know, operationally, on the ground, this is really, really going to matter in 2024. It really mattered, by the way, in 2022. It has really mattered in races all across the country, which is they are basically operating. Our party now is being driven by millions of proud patriots who are fighting with everything they got to make sure their country doesn't slip away. And the Republican Party now literally, right, is owned by a couple hundred oligarchs and doesn't have the kind of grassroots infrastructure that allows you to win and execute campaigns. This should be a much bigger story.
I was just going to say,
and they're burning a lot of that.
Underappreciated story. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, then they're burning a lot of that cash in the trash can behind headquarters to pay legal bills. To pay Trump's rising legal costs. It's just insane what they're spending the money on that they are burning, and they don't have as much of it.
Rick, can we add to the meltdown all the list of the meltdown that we're witnessing? Trump just keeps losing in court, right? Like getting creamed in court. Between him and Rudy, they now owe $700 million, right?
That's what they call real money at that point. Some real money.
No, I mean, it's just, and so he's campaigning, in 20, this is what I say about Trump, right? And he's much weaker than he was in 2020. He's now
Yeah,
campaigning from the
For sure.
courthouse and not the White House, right? He's far more degraded, extreme, and dangerous. His performance is more erratic, right? He's also, by the way, and this is something you guys should be talking about in the future, he's making the kind of political mistakes that candidates make when they lose. And I'll give you an example, right? Traditional political mistakes coming out
Yeah.
against the ACA. The ACA is unbelievably popular. He's now, he has no upside in coming out against it because he's not going to roll it back. And what he did was, in 2018, when I was a senior strategist for the DCCC, we won that election by 8.5 points because of Trump's opposition to the ACA.
Yep.
Like,
That was
we
a huge factor.
Yeah, this is incredibly dangerous place for them to go. Why would you ever go there? Right. And so his impulsivity, his diminishment, his wildness, his madness is causing him now the stuff he's doing with NATO, the stuff he's doing with the ACA. These are the kinds of things that cause traditional candidates to lose elections. And they're happening almost weekly now. And so when I add all this up, I look at this and I remain unbelievably optimistic about us winning the presidency. We have to work hard, though, to make it by as big a margin as possible. Flipping the House, and I think the Senate will be up for grabs up until Election Day.
I think there's a real potential that you get a preference cascade if you go into the fall, where Trump has, because he won't back down on anything. He's right now digging deeper on the Putin thing, and that is fundamentally unpopular with Americans because about 72% of Americans, the numbers I've been looking at, do not want Vladimir Putin to win in the Ukraine or the rest of the world. There's not a pro-Putin caucus except in Donald Trump's head and in the Republican House. Yeah. I think that they keep digging in on Dobbs and on Trump with the 16-week abortion ban because it's a round number. These things are all, in my mind, adding up. You may end up with that weird chemical thing like happened in 2008 with Obama when all of a sudden everything went whoosh in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
I think that's the likely scenario, Rick. I mean, the interesting question, does it happen? Does it happen earlier? Right. I mean, I think, it's very possible. It's my view that this election wants to be a 6, 7, 8, 9 point, 10 point victory for Biden. That's where it wants to be. I think a lot of the question will be is how well can the Biden campaign execute and take advantage of the opportunity they have. I have been very impressed. Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been very impressed with their digital operation in the last few weeks. They are operating oh my God, operating at an amazing level right now, both in terms of the attacks on Trump.
Their social is an order of magnitude better than it was in 2020.
Oh,
it's on fire, bang, bang, bang every day.
It's an order of magnitude better than it was a month ago. I mean, it's really up the game. I mean, it's really,
I think that's right,
very
Joe.
good stuff.
I think that's right.
Kudos to them because they're on it and it's working.
They are. And it's, by the way, it's one of the ways that you work with a candidate who's not Clinton or Obama, right, is that the campaign itself has to carry a little bit more of the burden. And they're doing it. I'm super impressed with what they're doing, both in terms of promoting Biden and kind of TikTok-y videos that are making him more relevant to younger people, which is really important, and also taking it to Trump. I mean, they're hurting Trump on a daily basis now.
They are putting a whooping on him every day. Hey, guys, we're getting on toward the end of the hour. I want to grab a few questions. Sam, you got a couple questions going here. Let's go ahead and pull the first one up. I don't understand the benefit of taking Putin's side. Can you explain what's in it for people like MAGA GOP politicians or little tuckums? I'll take this one, guys, because I'm the former Russia guy. Republicans love authoritarianism in their current political incarnation. And they look at Putin as the strong man, as the man on the white horse, as the leader, as the tough guy, as the guy who will not allow the gays to be in society, will not allow anybody except men to make the decisions in their society. They love that. They love it so much. And there's a contrarianism among certain Republican political elites like Tucker who want to do anything they can to tweak the great American tradition of that runs across both parties, all the way from Harry Truman all the way up to Barack Obama, where every single Republican or Democratic president, whether no matter what they disagreed on, looked at Russia and said, that's not us. That's not our values. That's not what America's Constitution represents. They approached it differently. They may have disagreed on some, small flavor things, but guys like Putin appealed to Tucker and Bannon because they see him as a way to burn everything down from our past and start fresh with this far right, alt right Christian nationalism that they think Putin represents. So that's that question. Joe, Simon?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also worry that there is compromise in all this stuff. I mean, I think that, I think that Putin had a huge success in 2016 in penetrating the Trump campaign and working directly with Republicans. And they've just continued to push the envelope. I mean, this is what he did in 2016. He took a step, it worked, he did more. He took another step, it worked, he did more, right? And now it's just so out and flagrant and out in the open. And, as if there really is a Russian fifth column in the United States now. It's really kind of an unprecedented
100%.
thing in modern American history. And we, in some ways, even the way we're talking about it, we're normalizing how dangerous and extraordinary it is. And I do think this is going to become far more front and center in the election. Because in addition, the other poll number, by the way, Rick, is that Putin in public opinion polling is at 5% approval in the United States. 5, and so good luck aligning yourself with, have fun with that, guys. Go for it. Go for it.
It's also, I think, starting to come to the fore with Johnson, the House taking a vacation without doing a vote on Ukraine. I mean, there's all of this and Navalny. I mean, all these things are sort of, I think, really sort of crystallized, I think, for people a lot more that, hey, there's real stakes here. There's something really going on, and this isn't right. And I think in the end, that's where the American people will come to, and that's to Biden's benefit and to Trump and the Republicans. Big problems for them as we go into the
detriment in the end. Okay, we've got time for one more question. Sam, throw it up there. What are some state and local races to watch? Think we can take back the House? Okay, I'm going to throw this to Simon and then to Joe.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that the House, the marginal dollar goes very far in House races, and the DCCC has put out their initial list of the key races, that they're going to be focusing on. If people are looking to do something before the filing in March. The second thing I would just say, if you've given to Biden, my view is everyone should give a little bit of money to Biden and join the campaign and start getting ready. But also, one of the most, I think, important expansion opportunities we have in 2024 is North Carolina. And I'm really promoting Anderson Clayton, the 26-year-old dynamic, amazing chair. We need to win North Carolina. We can win North Carolina. We're putting the pieces together there. And I really encourage everyone to take a hard look at the opportunities we have in North Carolina, and particularly the North Carolina Democratic Party itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's key because we tend to have focused our donors too much on federal. at the expense of state party. Like North Carolina State Party, we need to fight there. If we can help get them a little money each, that's going to make a big difference. And instead, look, I think we're going to. I'll be. The 8 to 17, I guess, that are left, Republicans who are sitting in seats Biden won, plus things like Alabama actually having to have two Democratic districts instead of the game we're playing with the legislature, New York. Look, I just think we're going to roll. Today. We are going to roll them in the House. I mean, we all need to do the work. We all need to support them, but they don't have a chance of holding the House. I don't.
If I can add one more thing to that, Joe, is that I can't tell you what a boost it was for the House Democrats what happened last week in New York 3.
Yeah,
in terms of confidence, sense of momentum. We're on offense now. The way we won, that it was close, but it wasn't close at the end. This was a huge momentum builder for the House Democrats in a way. They have a new leadership team, right? There's a whole bunch of new folks there, and they haven't been doing this forever. And so I think this changed the kind of the dynamic of the culture of the House Democrats. They now are going to be coming out of this with more confidence. They're going to raise more money. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to bring it to Johnson. I think this was a deeply consequential election for all of those intangibles that I think will really matter over the next 9 months.
I think in New York, Long Island could turn into a killing ground for the for the Republicans this fall, especially some of the candidates that shake out in the first district, and I think it could turn in. It put the lie to the whole thing that the New York Republican Party's back, baby, wiped out.
Yep.
Well, guys, it is 7:30. I could do this all night, but they will not let me. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We have got a great series of podcasts at Resolute. Joe Trippy's That Trippy Show, The Zero Line, Veterans for Responsible Leadership, Decoding Fox News, and, of course, The Enemies List with your friend Rick Wilson. Folks, thank you so much for joining me. Simon, thanks for coming on tonight. Joe, I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, folks.
Yep. Thanks,
See you, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, Simon.